Welcome everybody to today's video. Today we are going to talk about I think it's around 9 things that, although some of them are kind of repeats, but I asked on Instagram and Twitter for some of your guys' experiences with breastfeeding that you weren't expecting. So this video is basically going to be for you, pregnant women, or maybe you're just now starting to breastfeed, you have a newborn. This is about what women want you to know about breastfeeding. So we are going to talk about some experiences that these women had and, experiences they weren't expecting to have, and kind of hopefully give you some tips on how to avoid some of these things, or, kind of just making you aware of what some of these challenges could be and how you can handle them. So we're going to start with one. I'm going to mention who shared, and again, these are from, the ones that I'm mentioning are from Instagram. So from Dropkick Mongo, she said that she was not expecting how time-consuming breastfeeding was, but that what she decided to do was to embrace the time to focus on nurturing and feeding rather than the to-do list that kept building. And, this to me was a really good point, because we're always told when we have a new baby, try to focus on the baby and don't worry about the dishes that are piling or the laundry that's piling, just focus on the baby. And that can be really hard to do. When you add on top of that breastfeeding is very time consuming. And the other ones that I'm going to mention today all kind of mention the same thing, how how much it consumes your time. And when you think about breastfeeding and how often you have to breastfeed, it is very time consuming, but it doesn't last forever. And so as they get older and better at breastfeeding, it will be less, it'll take less time for you. So that was one that was mentioned. The next one was from Ali_Hansen. And she mentioned 2 things. She mentioned latch and pain, which I assume are the same. And then number 2 that she mentioned is the amount of feeds to maintain supply. Again, I thought that one was a very good point, the amount of feeds to maintain supply. In the beginning, you're going to be establishing supply. So the more you breastfeed, so the first week is really trying to establish how much milk your breast can hold. And then in about 4 weeks, your milk is established as to how much your breast can hold and how much it makes per feeding. So let's say that your baby feeds 2 ounces on each side, which is too much to start with, but I'm just going to use it as an example. So maybe you're able to hold 4 to 6 ounces in your breast. Now, it's constantly going to go up and down as the baby gets older. Some days they're going to feed more often, so this increases the milk, and then sometimes they feed less often, and this decreases the milk. But the capacity to hold will always stay the same. So how much milk you have on hand is determined by the baby and how often they feed. But the capacity of how much you can hold is established in the first week of breastfeeding. And that's why it's so important to breastfeed very often and frequent. So the amount of feeds is true. Like, you want to feed 8 to 12 times a day to establish a good supply, to establish the amount of milk that your breast can hold. And then by 4 weeks, you've got that milk established. Now you want to maintain it. So you're going to keep at least 8 times a day breastfeeding, and sometimes it could be more, but typically you want to be feeding at least 8 times a day. If you cannot feed that many times, then you want to pump the other time. So you want to get at least 8 times a day. So yes, the amount of feeds, it is, a good amount in order to maintain, to establish, and then to maintain your supply. Now the latch and pain, a lot of times it's kind of hard because we don't know specific challenges these moms had, but to have some latching issues and some pain is definitely a challenge that many mothers have. And I'm not going to say not to expect it, and I also don't want to say to expect it, because sometimes if you're prepared and you know what to look for and you get the proper help and you are aware of the situation, you can hopefully avoid any pain, especially with latching, if you make sure they're latched correctly. And I'm going to get into a little more of that in some of the other comments, so I'm just going to keep moving. So the second person is, and I don't know how to say this, but it's this _ Gaia _, so it's Gaia. So I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she mentions again the constant or frequency of feeds, and also how hungry and thirsty you feel. So again, the fact that you're frequently feeding, and I think that is important for moms to know. So if you get anything out of this video today, is that you will be breastfeeding frequently. You will feel like that's all you're doing. And that is normal in the beginning. It will eventually become less and less. The older they get, it becomes more quick, the more efficient they get. So it will get better, but in the beginning, it is very frequent and very constant. And sometimes you can feel like that's all you're doing. Then how hungry and thirsty you are, or that you feel, is very normal as well, because your body is burning. It's constantly making milk, so it's constantly burning calories. And so you need to keep those calories replenished. So having like snacks around the house so that you can grab them anytime you're feeding. Anywhere you might possibly find yourself breastfeeding, you should have like a little basket of healthy, high protein snacks, an apple, even just some fruit, anything that you can grab and eat while you're breastfeeding. That will help a lot. And also just carrying a nice big jug of water with you at all times, because you will find that you're thirsty. Now, you don't have to drink special or eat special in order to make enough milk, because your body is it's all on frequency, how often you feed. But you're going to want to eat and drink for your own energy and to kind of keep you healthy yourself. The next person is Jillian Marie 82, and she mentions that she was not expecting how difficult it would be, and also bleeding nipples. So again, because I don't know specific challenges that these moms had, I can't say maybe why it was difficult for her or why she had bleeding nipples. But a lot of times the bleeding nipples comes from the fact that the baby was not latched correctly, was probably feeding for a certain amount of time, not latched correctly, and mom was in pain. And then because of not being able to get that fixed, it then damaged the nipples, which then caused cracked, bleeding nipples. And like I said, I don't know specific challenges, but most likely with bleeding nipples, it's because of damage that was done to the nipple due to bad latch, or maybe it could be that the baby wasn't sucking properly. It could just be a couple of different things, but we'll kind of get into a little bit of that. So can you avoid bleeding nipples? Yes, usually if you can avoid, if you can make sure the baby's latched correctly, using lots of lanolin, this can just kind of help avoid sore nipples or painful latching, painful feeding, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit more. On this last one is Mom Attrition, and her two that she mentioned is how to care for her breasts when her milk came in, and how to relieve engorgement with heat before feeds, and then using a way to cool them after feeds. And this is where I feel like the latching and the pain and the bleeding nipples can come in. I just really like to say that if you experience pain, right away get help. I would rather you not breastfeed until you get that pain taken care of, like whatever's causing it, rather than and pump, rather than put a baby there, be breastfeeding in pain, and then do major damage to your nipples. You could just have one day where you're breastfeeding, the baby's not latching correctly, and bad latching, and they're not sucking properly, to have weeks of discomfort, pain, cracked, bleeding nipples, all because of just one day of bad feeding. So immediately, if you're having pain, you want to take them off the breast, try to relatch them, making sure their mouth is open nice and wide and they're getting a mouthful of breast. if no matter what you do, you cannot get it to breastfeed without pain. There's a difference between pain and discomfort, and I kind of talk about that in other videos. But you want, if you're like having to grab hold of something, and it's to the point where you're like literally, gritting your teeth, then that is not good. So again, you want to take the baby off. And that this can be another reason why a mom has sore, cracked, bleeding nipples, is how she takes the baby off her breast. You never want to just pull the baby off. You want to break the suction by sticking your finger in the corner of their mouth, pressing down, opening their mouth, and then pulling your nipple out. Never just pull them off. And sometimes when there's pain, you immediately like pull the baby off, and this is going to cause damage to the nipple right away. So unlatching baby correctly is really important. It is as important as latching. So unlatching, getting your baby off, and then relatching them. And if all of that you cannot stop the pain, then you need to stop breastfeeding, pump instead, and get some help. Have someone observe, get someone to help you with the breastfeeding and make sure that the latch is correct. And if the latch is correct, then maybe there's something else going on that they can take care of so that you're not in pain. Again, I say this because one day of bad latching and pain could cause weeks of pain, and I wouldn't want to see you go through that. So I'd rather you stop breastfeeding right away, try to relatch them, call somebody for help, and then if it's going to be a day or so before you can get that help, then maybe just do some pumping. And of course, always trying to get them on and getting them latched without pain. But if all else fails, you cannot, then I would say do some pump for every feed until you can get that help, because you just don't want to damage those nipples. So now how that kind of coincides with how to care for your breasts when your milk come in or your milk increases by day 3 to 5. A lot of times babies can latch really well in the hospital. But then your milk comes in or your milk increases and your breasts are very full. And if you cannot pinch the dark skin around the nipple, if you cannot pinch that and there be some give, the baby is not going to be able to latch. So therefore, when they do latch, if they are able to latch at all, it's going to be just to the nipple, and that is going to cause pain. And you may not even notice it that day, but then the next day you'll notice it. So you want to make sure that the breasts are softened, whether you use heat, warm showers, hand expression, a pump, anything to get some of that milk out to soften enough that you can pinch it. That means the baby can latch. So that's important. And I'm glad that she mentioned that she wasn't expecting how to care for her breasts. And so that's important for you to know what to do when your milk increases or comes in. You want to make sure that you soften that breast before each feed. Should only last a couple of days, but until then, you want to make sure that the baby's latching well. Because again, if they're not, then you're dealing with days and days of pain, and you shouldn't have to. So make sure that when your milk increases or your milk comes in, that you're able to pinch that so that the baby is able to latch. In fact, before you feed your baby, make sure with your own fingers that you can grab and get behind the nipple so that the baby can, because that's kind of your way of testing it to make sure that the baby's able to latch. If you can't squeeze, grab anything, then the baby's not going to be able to either. So do what you need to soften it so that the baby can latch. Ways to relieve engorgement. Again, you can use heat. You can use cabbage leaves just to soften it. Warm showers. You can use cold compresses for discomfort. You can use anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen just for discomfort and for swelling. And then, you can use cooling pads, cooling washcloths, anything just to kind of help relieve that soreness of being so full. And again, emptying some of that breast out. You don't want to empty all of the milk out because your body is making a ton of milk, just so that the baby then, it will kind of determine how much a baby needs by how much milk is being taken out or left in after each feed. And so knowing how to care for your breasts when your milk increases and comes in on day 3 to 5, and then knowing how to deal with engorgement can really, really help with eliminating the possibility of pain, while breastfeeding, or nipple soreness or bleeding or any of that kind of thing. So all of these pointers were really, really good tips, I think, for you to know. And I think that if you kind of are aware of these, you can plan yourself. Like, okay, this is what I'm going to do to make sure. So if you don't want to avoid pain and bad latching, you're going to learn everything you can about the proper latch. You're going to set up a support system so that afterwards, if you experience it, you know who to call, and you know where, like if this person's available, where you can be, find that help so that you can get it as soon as possible, because like I said, you need to take care of that matter right away. So kind of getting yourself set up for those things, having lanolin on hand to rub, that is safe for the baby, so you can have that on all day, before feeds, after feeds. Having like some cooling gel pads are nice to have in your bra in between feeds, and just being prepared. And that's what this is for, is just knowing what some of these moms experienced, what they want you to know that they experienced, so that maybe you won't have to, and maybe, sharing some of their, some of their experiences. So I want to thank you guys for watching today. I hope that this video helps you. If you have any tips, anything you would like to share, please leave that in the comments below. And I will talk to you guys again. I'll see you guys in my next video. So I want to thank you guys for watching today. I hope that this video helps you guys and answers any questions that you might have. I hope that it helps you be prepared for what is to come. And just knowing that you're not the only one if you are experiencing those things, and kind of giving you some tips on what to do. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you are aware of any videos that I put out. Hit the notification bell that's next to the subscribe button so that you are notified when I do put out a video. Being the fact that I don't put one out every week on a certain specific day every week, you kind of have to just know just to be watching. And if you do a lot of watching on YouTube, you may not even see when I put one up. So if you hit the notification bell, that will notify you when I put out a new video. So thank you guys again for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.